Hello everybody, September checking in from the Hanure server this morning. And in this video I want to talk about getting prepared for Archeage 3.5 that is coming to the North America / EU servers June 7th. The goal of this video is to help you and everybody in general to save as much gold as possible, and I'm going to talk more about that here in a minute. So the main question I get many times over is what should I buy or what should I save? And the reason that I'm getting those questions is people want to invest in things for when 3.5 hits. That's kind of natural. And other times people just really don't know what's going to be important in 3.5 and what should they be saving. Now, typically I have refrained from giving too much advice about that kind of stuff because I just did not feel like we had enough information. However, we've now had 2 try-on live streams about 3.5, and we actually have some very, very solid information from omnom.io. I feel like I can comfortably make these predictions. However, if you do not want to watch this whole video, please skip to the last, 6 minutes or so. And this video is going to be about proving what the predictions are. But if you just want to blindly follow my advice, skip to the last bit and check out what they are. Now, the information at omnom.io has actually been available for some time. And any of you guys that actually follow omnom.io, either on the forums, website, or even catch any of his live streams, you may be ahead of the game a little bit. And you might also have a good idea of what I would recommend. But the big reason I did not speak to the matter, even though I already had seen this information, is we really did not know exactly how Tryon was going to implement this patch. Were they going to keep it the same as Korea, or were they going to tweak things for the North America EU players, which is something that they've done many times in the past. But by carefully watching the last live stream from Tryon, we can see that the information on omnom.io is all but validated. So I feel safe enough to talk about it. All right, so let's get into this information. The first thing that I want to talk about is your current weapons and armor and what you should or shouldn't be doing with them. So to do this, I'm going to actually use an example from my inventory here on Hanure and use or coin a new term called above the grade, which is to say if you have an item that is above the grade required to upgrade to the next tier. So for example, I have this Ethereum Divine bow, and if you watch the last live stream, you'll know that this bow can now in 3.5 be resealed and turned into a Delphinod. And for that matter, any Ethereum that you have has that same opportunity in 3.5. The only requirement is that it is at least the grade of unique, and because this bow is divine, it is above the grade. But what you also have to understand is in the new crafting system, when you take an item from like Ethereum to Delphinod, the grade of the Delphinod that you get out of it is going to be reset back to basic. Now, there is some mention of a chance if you use a crafting armor house like I have here on Hanure, that the item has a chance to pick up some random grade automatically. Now, they didn't really make it very clear. They said something like it could become grand or rare. And so it's really unclear exactly how that's going to work. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to assume that when you upgrade something, it's likely going to come out the basic grade. So once I get that item upgraded, this bow upgraded to Delphinod, I could potentially regrade it to Celestial and then take it to Ionad. But before I do something like that, there's some things that I really want to consider. One of the ones is it above the grade, and does it make sense for me to actually use an item that is above the grade, or does it make more sense for me to just hold on to it and use it as my bow, or should I be trying to sell this thing now or should I be trying to sell it in 3.5? Now you may wonder why the hell anybody would buy an Ethereum Divine. Currently, they're not very valuable, but let's look at this. There is actually a good chance that these weapons will become desirable as people start working on the Hanure items. So if you watch the last live stream, anybody that is working on a Divine Hanure bow, which means that they're going to be trying to go from Divine to Epic, they will have to feed in weapons, similar weapons, which in this case is a bow, with a minimum grade of Divine. So if you're going from Divine to Epic, you have to give it Divine items. Now, it actually becomes a matter of how much XP is my Divine Ethereum bow worth. I can actually answer that question by using the spreadsheet that I created in my 3.5 Hanure weapon upgrade video. We can actually find out that this bow is worth 1,623 XP. So more importantly, using this same spreadsheet and switching over to the upgrade cost tab, we actually can look for the optimal path for somebody working on a Divine to Epic Hanure bow. And in this case, we can look through this, but it's highlighted in green. The best option for the gold cost to the XP ratio is for that person to use Ionad Divines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that same value of XP to determine that the bow is going to be worth in 3.5 a value of 4.48 gold per XP. That's what the Ionad Divines average out to. So I can apply the same low value, that's the best value for that XP in this tier, and all I have to do is say, okay, my XP value of this bow is 1,623 XP, and the gold per XP in the best value is 4 gold and 48 silver, times those two numbers together, and now the value of this bow in 3.5 should at minimum be 7,271 gold. And actually, initially, I have a feeling that the whales are going to hit their shit hardcore. They're going to come out credit card swiping, and there's going to be a very high demand initially on all this kind of stuff, which it will taper down over time, but initially it will be pretty high. And so conversely, if I was to try to sell this bow now in 3.0, I can look on the auction house, and there was one here earlier. Let's see if it's still here. This bow is basically a Divine Ethereum bow, has been selling between 3,500 and a little over 5,000, so I could maybe get 5,000 for it right now. So in my case, it actually does make more sense to hold on to this bow until 3.5. The short answer to the question is, if you have an item that is above the grade, what should you do with it? And in most cases, everything that I've looked at so far, the best thing to do with it is hold it till 3.5. Now, this spreadsheet only includes weapons. I didn't do anything for armor, but we can safely assume, because of other things that I'm going to be talking about here in a second, it's going to apply pretty much across the board. Okay, so now let us talk about items that are not above the grade. This is actually much easier to answer. If the item is upgradable to the next tier, regardless of where it's currently at. I mean, if you've got an Illustrious, if you got a Magnificent, if you get an Ethereum, or even a Delphinod, it does not matter. You should actually upgrade that item in 3.0. And if you watch the last live stream, Crolin said as much pretty emphatically. And I will explain why that is true here in just a minute. But if the item is not upgradable, that is a item that is not above the grade and it is currently not upgradable to the next tier, I still suggest that you hold on to it because we're getting ready to talk about crafting and it's going to be much more expensive, so the value of your item is still going to go up. Which actually brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about, that is crafting, the cost, and what you should be investing in and stockpiling. This is going to encompass the statement that I said at the very beginning of this video, which was with the goal to save you and everybody in general as much gold as possible. And I'm also going to answer why Crowlin said in the last live stream, if you have an upgradable, upgrade it now. What this amounts to is that crafting, as I said earlier, is going to get much more expensive. Not only in the cost to craft, but in the materials required to do so. And what we are looking at is crafting items is going to require sometimes as much as 5 times their current materials. And even some of those specific sub materials are going to require more stuff to craft in and of themselves. So let me put this in context. Let's go ahead and take a look at upgrading a leather chest piece in 3.0 and then compare that to the anticipated values in 3.5. Okay, so to do that, I actually had to make a new spreadsheet here, and I'm just going to go through this real quick. So, okay, so here what we have here at the top are 2 green tables, but let's just focus on the second one. The first one was just there, so I knew the values of 3.0, and then I did some math. But the second table here lists all the items used to craft various tiers of the leather armor chest piece that I just talked about. And so what you'll see here, what I did is I took the current known value from my server at 3.0, and let me just stop there. It doesn't matter that I'm using the values from my server because your server is different or you're on the fresh start. It doesn't matter. What matters is the fact of the change. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. So I applied the current known changes to those values here in 3.5. And so I really only had to do 2 calculations. First, Archeage. Archeage in 3.5 should actually become a tad cheaper. And the reason for that is the reported drop rates of Archeage is up about 30%. Second thing I did is I had to recalculate the values of oils tier 2 and up because those are going to become more expensive as each tier requires the previous tier in the craft. So what we end up with is a much more expensive oil at tier 4, like for example here, the deeply colored oil. But the same applies for all the other oils like the scented petal fragment and the rainbow polish. All of those are likely going to close to double in value. Okay, so let's move on to these next tables here. The first table is, I'm going to explore the cost to craft an illustrious leather piece in 3.0 and 3.5. The big thing here is I took the values of crafting straight to illustrious at an armor house in 3.0 because I have one and we already know that that is the cheapest way to craft an illustrious in our current version 3.0 versus crafting an item up in 3.5. The quantities of materials used in 3.5 is slightly higher in this tier, and it actually amounts to approximately double the cost to make this same item in 3.5. So if we continue on to the magnificent grade of the chest piece here, which is this next table here, you'll see the cost to upgrade starts to actually get significantly more expensive, almost 3 times more expensive at this point. And if we continue on and we take a look at magnificent, then Ethereum, then Delphinod, we're actually looking at the cost to upgrade these items on the magnitude of 4 times the current cost just to upgrade these. And then finally, if you look at the IONET, it actually settles back down to roughly around 3 times the current cost. This is, again, why Crolin said, if you have an upgradable, upgrade it now. I actually need to point out something here. This is not actually a fair comparison or a fair idea of what any particular piece is going to be worth in 3.0. And this data does not account for the RNG factor that we currently have in 3.0. Meaning, if I truly wanted to make like an IONET divine piece in 3.0 mathematically, due to the RNG, I would actually have to craft 7 Delphinods to get that one upgradable. But the point of this is not to show you the true crafting cost, rather to show you the upgrade cost so we can ascertain the items that you should be investing in and what you should do with your current item. So all that being said, what items are worth investing in and holding on to? Okay, so first thing, very, very high on my list, the tier 4 oils. That is the deeply colored oil, the scented petal fragments, and the rainbow, I'm sorry, I called them scented petal fragments? No, scented petal pigments and the rainbow polish. Not only is crafting going to require more of these, meaning every tier is going to require more than you're previously using, each one of those is going to require the previous tier to craft them, which is going to directly bring up the value just by that fact alone. Furthermore, but to a lesser degree, the tier 3 oils and the tier 2 oils, they're also going to require the previous tier's oil to make. There is no changes in the basic oils other than the fact that there's just going to be more of them being used. The next things that I actually consider safe investments purely based on calculations that I did in the previous spreadsheet that I showed you is armor pieces and weapon pieces at Ethereum, or even some of the cheaper Delphinods. I mean, there's some stuff up there that's pretty inexpensive. Even if you don't plan on upgrading those items, like if you buy an Ethereum and you're like, I don't want to spend, all this gold to upgrade it to a Delphinod, it doesn't matter. The value of that Ethereum, because the price to upgrade from Magnificent to Ethereum is going to be 3 times higher, is only going to drive those values of those pieces up. Now, I'm not going to say that a grand Ethereum piece is all of a sudden, in 3.0 is worth, I don't know, $500-600 or 600 gold. I'm not going to say it's going to be worth 1,800 gold all of a sudden, but it is safe to assume that we are looking at a 1.5 to 2, maybe even higher of the current going rates on any of these Ethereum weapons, armor pieces that you're seeing, because right now it's pretty much stagnated. People aren't buying and selling Ethereums unless you're on the Fresh Start servers. And what else is actually going to be happening is people are going to start feeding all these Ethereum pieces that are already on the market. They're going to start upgrading them, and they're going to start feeding them into their Aranor pieces, which is going to dry up all the existing pieces, and then the only avenue to make the new pieces is to use the higher crafting cost that is associated with 3.5. There are some other things to a lesser degree, like the tier 3 specific materials like the Wind Spirit leather, the beautifully colored fabric, the Nori forest lumber, and Sunridge ingots. Those are likely going to go up slightly. Most of that is due to the requirement of the base tier 2 oils going up in value, and the fact that you're just going to be using more of them. There's going to be more of a demand on them, especially initially. So if you see any of those at a lower than average price, probably a good idea to scoop them up. The last thing that I want to talk about is obsidian weapons and armor. I know many people out there actually went down this path. I am actually one of those people. Obsidian, I feel like, will probably retain its value or its current value for at least a short term, 3-4 months, as there's really not going to be. Let me rephrase that. There's actually going to be more people not trying to make everything Aranor than there is going to be those who are going for it. This, along with the new regrade classification on Obsidian as hard, meaning all items Obsidian is going to have the lowest based percentage chance to successfully regrade. Those of us that already have some of this stuff, it will actually serve a purpose and fill those gaps and be a fairly common, if not somewhat sought after alternative to Aranor. Take all this information and all my thoughts about Obsidian with the understanding this is actually just my best guess, and I really have no way to prove or mathematically show you that any of that stuff that I just said is actually going to be correct about Obsidian. So that is, I think, about it for me today. I hope you have found this video both informative and helpful. So if you'd like to support my channel, you can follow me on Twitch, Twitter, or becoming a Patreon. All those links will be in the video description down below. And remember, every Friday I do regrade streams from the PTS. And if I cannot play on the PTS, I will be playing on the live server. And in those cases, we talk about the current news and we bounce around ideas like I just shared here in this video. So I hope you join me on Fridays. But until next time, September saying, be well.